Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. In the previous podcast, I was talking about Ross Coulthart's recent assertion that the Tic Tac UFO that was encountered by members of the USS Nimitz back in 2004 wasn't something built by non-human intelligence. Instead, according to Coulthart, he has been exposed to information that has convinced him that it was something built by aerospace defense contractor Lockheed Martin. I don't believe that. I just failed to believe that for a lot of reasons. There were objects like this that have been seen by military personnel as well as citizens since the 1940s, and I did say that in the previous episode. But what I think this is part of, I think what's going on here, I mean, when you think about the recent Wall Street Journal article where they tried to dismiss, like for instance, the 1967 Malmstrom incident where a flying saucer shows up over this Malmstrom Air Force Base where they have these nuclear missiles, right? And back in 1967, all of a sudden the nuclear missiles are all turned off, right? And then after the craft leaves, that was seen by several witnesses, right? More than one person saw this, right? After the craft leaves, then the missiles went back online. Now, in that Wall Street Journal article, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick tried to allege that that was they were experimenting with this new electromagnetic device, and that's what shut the missiles down temporarily. And nobody told the people that worked there about it because it was top secret, right? And also that article went on to state that a lot of the encounters, a lot of sightings of UFOs and encounters with UFOs that people in the military had talked about over the years actually were just the testing of experimental aircraft by the United States government, and they just didn't tell anybody about it because it was top secret. I think this is all lies. I think what they're trying to do, what's happening here, right? They're trying to put the toothpaste back into the tube. That's what it seems to me. That's what seems to be happening with this right now. And I don't know who Ross Coulthart's sources are, or that he just walks away believing this. I mean, to me, right, I would have to be shown a demonstration of this object in action, right, to know unequivocally that this is something that was built by Lockheed Martin. Outside of that, I wouldn't believe it. I mean, I don't care if his General Brassballs comes up to me and says, "Hey, yeah, this is what it is, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell them I told you," right? I'm not going to believe that, right? I'm still going to be skeptical of that, because anybody from the Pentagon that would provide that kind of information, I would have to be very skeptical about it, because the Pentagon has been lying about this whole phenomenon for almost 80 years at least, right? So I just don't believe it. And I just think there's an effort ongoing by the deep state, or whatever you want to call them, the secrecy group, whatever. And they're trying to make it sound like, all these things that people have encountered, like in the military, they're focused on the military right now. But I think the overall goal here is to make everyone think that what everyone's been seeing over all these decades was top secret experimental aircraft. To me, right, it's an effort by the deep state or whatever you want to call it, the secrecy group, the UFO control group, whatever, right? It's an effort by the Pentagon to make it sound like this is something different. This is stuff that they've been working on over the decades. I mean, there was another thing I heard just today. Jack Connor was talking about this on Cosmic Road earlier today. He was talking about how now Ross Coulthart is saying that all the drones were just things that were sent here from China. I have trouble believing that China has come up with some new form of a drone that doesn't use propellers or anything. It's some sort of electromagnetic drone. I don't know if I believe that. I think it's all nonsense. I think we're being fed lies. There's a new narrative being established here, and unfortunately, it seems that some people in the UFO community, some of the loudest voices that we have, are part of this for some reason. Like Ross Coulthart, I don't understand how he could not be skeptical of this kind of information based on what we know about what the Tic Tac did when people saw it. Let's talk about some of the things that happened when people like David Fravor encountered this Tic Tac. People seem to forget all of a sudden. Here's an article from CBS News. They remember back in 2021, there was a 60 Minutes episode where they had David Fravor on as well as Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich. And here's what it says in this article. It says, retired Navy Commander David Fravor was commander of the FA-18F Squadron on the USS Nimitz when he says he spotted the object during a flight off the coast of Southern California on November 14, 2004. In a 2021 interview with 60 Minutes, Fravor, a graduate of the Top Gun Naval Flight School, also spoke about what he saw. He and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich were training with the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, Fravor told 60 Minutes. At the time, advanced radar on a ship that was part of their training group, the USS Princeton, detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich diverted to investigate. Okay, let's just stop there for a second. Remember, these aerial objects that were coming up on radar were descending from 80,000 feet in less than a second, okay? And here's what Fravor said. Here's a direct quote. I said, dude, do you see that thing down there? And we saw this little white tic-tac looking object, and it's just kind of moving about the whitewater area, Fravor told 60 Minutes. During the training exercise, Fravor and Dietrich each had a weapon system officer in the backseat of their FA-18F. There was 4 of us in the airplanes literally watching this thing for roughly about 5 minutes, Fravor said in his 2021 interview. Fravor went in for a closer look. He described the tic-tac object mirroring his movements, saying it was aware we were there. The object was the size of Fravor's FA-18F with no markings, no wings, and no exhaust plumes, he said. When Fravor tried to cut off the UAP, it accelerated so quickly that it seemed to disappear. He said it was detected roughly 60 miles away less than a minute later. And this is what else he said. He says, I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 or 20 years. And this is that's what he told the House Oversight Committee's National Security Subcommittee when he had that hearing back in 2023. Also, it says here, in addition to Fravor, the panel heard testimony from Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who has spoken out about encountering UAP on training missions, and David Rush, who served for 14 years as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And here's another article from History.com about this incident from 2004, where it talks about this. It says 2 fighters were diverted to intercept one of the strange objects. When they first arrived on the scene, the pilots didn't see any flying objects, but they did observe what the lead pilot, Commander David Fravor, later referred to as a disturbance in the ocean. The water was churning with white waves breaking over what looked like a large object just under the surface. Okay, let's just stop there. See, it seems like that seems to have gotten forgotten in all the dialogue recently. What about that? Was that something? Was that object that he saw under the surface of the water, right, where this tic-tac was hovering above? Was that something that Lockheed Martin built as well? I mean, there's a lot of questions here. I'd love to know what convinced Ross Coulthard to think that this categorically proves once and for all that the object that the USS Nimitz encountered back in 2004 was something that was built by mankind. I'd like to know what convinced them. Outside of a demonstration, right, there's nothing. There should be nothing that would convince anybody. So was he shown a demonstration of this, right? To me, right, if he was, right, just say he was, because I don't see what else could have convinced him to make a statement like this. I mean, showing some documents, if you were shown some documents, how do you know they're not phony? If somebody tells you this, right, how do you know they're not lying to you? If somebody shows you a video, how do you know it wasn't a phony AI-generated video? How do you know? You would have to be shown something. You would have to be shown, you're given a demonstration. That's what would have to happen. That's how I see it anyhow. So basically, they're trying to make people believe now that all of these encounters that military personnel have had with UFOs over the decades was apparently just experimental aircraft that was top secret, and they couldn't tell them about it. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Think about this. This has been going on since the 40s. Ever since the UFO flap began in earnest back in 1947. Ever since that it began, right, there have been numerous encounters by military personnel with strange craft. Some of them back in the 40s and the 50s, for instance, that looked like tic-tacs, like as the objects as described by David Fravor. Very similar, egg-shaped craft, things like that. This stuff has been talked about. There's been reports from numerous different UFO investigation. A lot of independent investigators have uncovered this. Some stuff of Project Blue Book talked about some of these incidents as well. So this has been something that's been going on. So they're going to try to tell me, like in the early 40s and the 50s, when people were seeing very similar types of objects, right? Military personnel were encountering very similar types of objects back during those times. At a time when jets were a brand new thing. We didn't even have supersonic jets until the mid 50s, right? So, but yet somehow somebody developed a propulsionless object that looks like a tic-tac back then. That's what they're trying to tell you. That's what they're trying to convince you of now. They're trying to make you believe. They're trying to make the world think something else is. And here's the problem for her. It's already over. It's already over. There's something here, right? There's some non-human intelligence here, right? I don't know how, where it came from, whatever, right? I don't have any proof of that here. But one thing I do have proof of, right, that I've been talking about on this podcast is that we are not alone, right? And there are objects that people encounter. There obviously could not have been made by us, obviously not. But yet we're being told that now. They're lying, and I'm really. The more I thought about this whole situation after listening to that podcast from Coulthard yesterday, the more it upset me, because I'm thinking, how does he know this? I mean, what was he possible? What could he have possibly been shown or presented with that convinced him that the 2004 Tic Tac was constructed by Lockheed Martin? I'd really like to know that. Outside of a demonstration, there would be nothing. There would be nothing. No documents. Nothing. Right? How do you know? If the government has been lying about this all of these decades, and all of a sudden an insider is going to say, "Yeah, this is what it is, man. Yeah, you can take it to the bank." Oh, really? Okay, I will. And think about it. Think about it. Anyway, let's pull up some of these old cases. Okay, now here are some old reports that I found online. This is from NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. This was something that was co-founded by retired Marine Major Donald Kehoe back in the mid-1950s. And there's a lot of reports here. I'll leave links for all this stuff so you can check it out for yourself. But for instance, here's an incident from November of 1957. On November 4th, 1957, in Oro Grande, New Mexico, at 1:10 p.m. local time near Oro Grande, New Mexico, James Stokes' car began to malfunction. The radio faded out, then the engine stopped. There were 9 other cars stalled at this spot also. The occupants of the cars were watching an egg-shaped object approach from the northeast, pass low over the cars within 1,500 feet to 3,000 feet, move to the northwest, then come back within a few minutes and make another pass. Stokes estimated it to be 500 feet in length. He also reported heat and pressure when the UFO passed overhead. Later that day, he noticed his skin was reddened as if sunburned. The next day, this had disappeared. So that's one case right there. Here's another egg-shaped object incident from the same day, November 4th, 1957, 3 miles southeast of El Paso Airport in Texas at 7:30 p.m. A Border Patrol Inspector Burton saw an egg-shaped object with bluish glow approaching from the southwest at a 30-degree elevation with whirring sound like an artillery shell after car stalled and headlights dimmed and blacked out. Object passed over car at 100 feet height, headed west, changing altitude at irregular intervals, and rose vertically at Franklin Mountains. So what was that object right there? Was that object that they're talking about in 1957? An egg-shaped, tic-tac-shaped kind of object? Is that something that Lockheed Martin had constructed back then? I wonder. Now here's a story here from 1948. Pilot has dogfight with oval object. Okay, about 9:45 p.m., November 18th, 1948, Lieutenant Henry G. Combs was approaching Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland, near the nation's capital in a T-6. Suddenly, he noticed an odd light over the base, so he closed in to check on it. Abruptly, the light began to take violent, evasive action. Repeatedly, Combs tried to close in on the maneuvering object, but each time, it would turn so sharply that he couldn't turn with it. In his official report on the incident, Lieutenant Combs stated, "I chased the light up and down and around for about 10 minutes. Then, as a last resort, I made a pass and turned on my landing lights. Just before the object made a final tight turn and headed for the coast, I saw that it was a dark gray, oval-shaped object, smaller than my T-6. The UFO moved at variable speeds, vertically and horizontally. Lieutenant Combs estimated it traveled as fast as 600 miles per hour." Okay, so there's all kinds of cases like this. Here's another story from 1948. It's an article here from History.com. It says, when a United States fighter pilot got into a dogfight with a UFO. What does this one say? It says, the incident, which still lacks an airtight explanation, involved a 27-minute air encounter between a veteran World War II fighter pilot named George F. Gorman and a mysterious white orb at high altitude above Fargo, North Dakota. "I've never seen anything like it," Gorman told a local newspaper following the October 1st, 1948 event. "If anyone else had reported such a thing, I would have thought they were crazy." Captain Ruppelt, I talk about Edward Ruppelt, operated Project Blue Book, which continued the work of Project Sign and Project Grudge, a series of hush-hush studies conducted by the United States Air Force between 1947 and 1969. His mission to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. What makes the Gorman dogfight unique in the now declassified pages of Project Blue Book is not only the length of the encounter, but that it was recorded both on the ground and in the sky by numerous reputable sources. Here's what it says about this. It says, at the time of the incident, Gorman, a 25-year-old former fighter pilot, served as a second lieutenant in the North Dakota Air National Guard. It was this role that placed him behind the flight controls of a P-51 Mustang on October 1st, 1948, taking part in a cross-country flight alongside other National Guard airmen. While the other pilots landed at Fargo's Hector Airport on that fateful evening, Gorman stayed in the air in order to get in some night flying time in the cloudless conditions. Having circled his P-51 over a lighted football stadium, he was preparing to land at about 9 p.m. Advised by the control tower that the only other plane in the vicinity was a Piper Cub, which Gorman could see about 500 feet below him, he witnessed what he believed to be the taillight of another craft passing on the right, though the tower had no other object on the radar. Deciding to take a closer look at the unidentified object, Gorman pulled his plane up and closed to within about 1,000 yards. It was about 6 to 8 inches in diameter, clear white, and completely without fuzz at the edges. He said of the object in his report, it was blinking on and off. As I approached, however, the light suddenly became steady and pulled into a sharp left bank. I thought it was making a pass at the tower. Deciding to follow, Gorman tried in vain to catch up with the object, reporting that he finally got behind it at around 7,000 feet, where it made a sharp turn and headed straight for the P-51. Almost at the point of collision, Gorman dived and said the light passed over his canopy at about 500 feet before cutting sharply once more and heading back in his direction. Just as collision seemed imminent once again, Gorman said the object shot straight up in the air in a steep climb, so steep that when he tried to intercept, his plane stalled at about 14,000 feet. The object was not seen again, but according to Gorman, he had been engaged in aerial maneuvers with it for 27 minutes by the time he brought his plane to land. So what about this object, okay? What about that thing? I'd like to know. Back in 1948, did Lockheed Martin create that too? Shaken by the encounter, the pilot went on to report he noticed no sound, exhaust trail, or odor from the object, and while he had reached speeds of up to 400 miles per hour while in pursuit, he couldn't keep up with whatever it was. I am convinced that there was definite thought behind its maneuvers, Gorman said in a sworn statement to his commander. I am further convinced that the object was governed by the laws of inertia because its acceleration was rapid but not immediate, and although it was able to turn fairly tight at considerable speed, it still followed a natural curve. Gorman reported blacking out temporarily due to the excessive speed he reached in attempting to turn with the object. I am in fairly good physical condition, and I do not believe that there are many, if any, pilots who could withstand the turn and speed affected by the object and remain conscious, he wrote. The object was not only able to outturn and outspeed my aircraft, but was able to attain a far steeper climb and was able to maintain a constant rate of climb far in excess of my aircraft. And there were other witnesses to this object as well. Gorman wasn't the only one to see the mysterious object that night. It was also witnessed by air traffic controllers Lloyd Jensen and H.E. Johnson, who were manning the Hector Airport Tower. According to Johnson, who reported seeing the Piper Cub and the UFO at the same time, the object was traveling at a high rate of speed and was fast enough to increase the spacing between itself and Gorman's fighter. Johnson described the object as appearing to be only a round light perfectly formed with no fuzzy edges or rays leaving its body. Dr. A.E. Cannon, the pilot of the Piper Cub, and his passenger also viewed the object, both in the sky and upon the return to the airport, where they immediately joined the traffic controllers in the tower. Cannon described the light as moving very swiftly, much faster than the 51. 2 Civil Aeronautics Authority employees on the ground also reported seeing the object. So, yeah. Now, then they talk about the different options that what it might have been. And it says here, could it have simply been another aircraft? Taking the technology of the time into account, Dr. Travis Taylor, aerospace engineer and author of Introduction to Rocket Science and Engineering, believes any other aircraft would have been apparent to Gorman. Yes, I agree with that. Earlier that year, he points out, Chuck Yeager made his famous flight in the Bell X-1 at record-breaking speed, in which he broke the sound barrier. A craft like that would have been very obvious to a pilot in a P-51. Gorman would have known what he was looking at. The X-1 looked like an airplane, says Taylor. If he was chasing something that didn't look like a standard aircraft, and he couldn't keep up with it. Either it was too far away and he didn't realize how far away it was, or it was moving faster than a P-51 could move. No, nobody really knows. There's no explanation about what this thing is. I mean, there's more to this article, and I'll leave, of course, the link for you to check it out if you're interested. But again, it all brings me back to the point I'm trying to make here, is the fact that what did the great bard say? Something's rotten. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and that's what I think is going on here. Something is rotten in the state of the UFO community, because we're being fed a lot of disinformation these days. There's obviously some sort of an effort to make it seem that UFOs that people in the military have been seeing, at least, are all experimental aircraft, and everybody's stupid and just makes mistakes, and the people responsible just don't say anything to anybody. That's what they're trying to make people believe. However, let me just point this out. I encountered one of these creatures, obviously one of these pilots of these weird crafts, and in the that was back in the 70s, and in the mid-1990s, along with another witness, I saw one of these craft up close and personal, and I can assure you that this was no way something that could have been made by humans. There's absolutely no chance of that, because this thing made absolutely no sound, and it was as big as a house, and it was right there. I was within 20 feet of this thing, and it was only 2.5 stories off the ground. Absolutely no sound, and it moved in ways that our aircraft can't move. It moved incredibly close to the tops of trees. It was incredible, right? So I know for a fact, I had my own personal experiences, so I know that there's something here, and I know that there's some sort of a new facade being presented here, being constructed right before our eyes, and I just hope that you're going to start hearing voices that might agree with some of this crap, right? You know what? The hell with those voices. I don't care what those voices say. We are not alone. There's something here, and I don't know if they think they're going to try to sweep all of this back under the rug somehow. They're very, very much mistaken, because as everyone knows, right, we already have proof that shows that there's something here with us. There's no question about it. We've been talking about it for well over a year now on this channel, as well as other channels out there have been talking about it. Maybe not as much as I've been talking about it, but I think it's that important. As far as everyone should be concerned, we already have evidence that we're not alone on this world. That's the truth of this, right? And let's just look at some of the evidence. Let's just talk about. How about the object we're talking about, the 2023 Las Vegas alien incident? Of course, we see an object. It was captured on multiple different video sources, right? Private home security cameras. There was a Amazon robot that captured it. There was all kinds of different video sources. A police body cam. A lot of people were able to not only capture it on video, right, but a lot of people, even more people, saw it and reported it. They thought it was a meteor, and they reported it to the American Meteor Society. That object, right, had no heat signature, so it could not have been a meteor. What we see falling from the sky is some sort of a craft operated by non-human intelligent beings. How do we know this? Because the craft came down in the backyard of a family of 4 in Las Vegas, the Kenmore family, right? The object came down and made a hard landing in their backyard, and then it became invisible somehow. We don't have stuff that could do that. And then, even more spectacularly, there were creatures that exited that craft. The witnesses stated that the next thing they knew, after that object hit the ground, right, and became invisible almost instantaneously upon impact, right, the next thing they knew, they heard thousands of footsteps running off in all various directions. They eventually ended up calling 911, but not before they tried to enter the backyard to confront what these creatures were. The witnesses only said they saw 2 8 to 10 foot tall alien creatures, right, that were definitely not human. That's what they said. They actually called up 911 and said that to the 911 dispatchers. They actually had a cell phone video that we later got to examine, and we were able to determine that, yes, they were telling the truth, because we could see the beings. There were actually more creatures there than what they saw that night, what they encountered. They filmed with that cell phone camera, and it was actually, as we all know, that cell phone footage was authenticated by Scott Roeder, the crime scene reconstruction expert from Ohio, and his team, right? And they determined that that cell phone footage was authentic, and it wasn't tampered with. There was no CGI. And what do we see when we look closely at that video? We see alien creatures. There is absolutely no way. I'm going to show some of them on the screen right now. There's absolutely no way these things that we're showing on the screen could have just appeared, right? This is not pareidolia, right? These are entities. These are humanoid entities that are most certainly not human, and that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. There were various creatures captured in that 1 minute and 41 second long cell phone footage, right? And there's something here among us. So all of these voices out there trying to tell you now, trying to put the toothpaste back into the tube by telling us now that, it's all experimental aircraft that people have been seeing and we just didn't tell you about it. It's all nonsense. This story from Ross Coulthard about the Tic Tac being constructed by Lockheed Martin. I need a little bit more evidence from before I could believe that nonsense, right? I mean, is it possible? I mean, by 2004, I mean, let's face it. By 2004, we were talking about over 50 years worth of reverse engineering, right? That had been going on. Maybe they figured something out and they were able to build something, but I need to see that. To me, right, it's more believable that it's NHI technology that Fravor and company encountered that day than it was Lockheed Martin technology. It's more believable because we don't have stuff like that. How come we haven't seen it? That's 21 years ago now. 2004 is 21 years ago. How come we don't see it? How come they haven't given us a demonstration after all this time? If Lockheed Martin really has this kind of technology and the government knows about it, how come the government hasn't stated anything after all of these years? Over 2 decades now we're talking. It's unbelievable, and I like to know. Again, for me to believe Ross Coulthard, I just don't understand how he can make a statement like this and say it's categorically. There's no question about it now, right? This is Lockheed Martin technology. How do you know? Were you shown a demonstration? At least tell us that, right? What makes you so sure that it's Lockheed Martin technology? Did they put you in a time machine and take you back in time to 2004 and you saw it with your own eyes and you saw somebody with a remote control operating it from someplace? I don't know how you could believe something like this with just somebody telling you. Without at the very least, you would have to have been shown a demonstration, right? At the very least. Outside of that, I don't see how you can make a statement like that. That's shoddy reporting as far as I'm concerned, right? So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's very important. And so this is stuff that's been going on a long time now. And people have been seeing these things since the 1940s. So all of this hogwash that we've been getting recently from Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and now whoever Ross Coulthard's source is, right? To me, right, okay, well, where's your evidence? Words doesn't work. The words won't work here. Right? They don't work here. For one thing, we know that Kirkpatrick was lying because the electromagnetic device that he was talking about wasn't even developed until the 1970s, right? The Malmstrom incident happened in 1967. 2004, again, that's 21 years ago. 21 years ago, right? And how come we haven't, how come this Tic Tac technology hasn't been unveiled to the public yet? That the taxpayers who footed the bill for it, apparently, right? Obviously. I mean, the military is getting $1 trillion budget again this year. It's been almost $1 trillion the last couple of years, right? And now they got another $1 trillion. So I think the taxpayers deserve to see the fruits of the money that they've been dishing into the government all these decades. It's time to show this technology then if you have it, right? It's time to show. Here's the bottom line. Let's forget about all of this craziness, right? All these dumb stories about that it's Lockheed Martin technology. Let's forget it. How about just telling the people the truth that there's a non-human intelligence here instead of lying to them? We're sick of this. Everyone's sick of it. It's sick. It's tiring. It's so stupid and dumb, especially now. When we have the evidence is right there, right? We can see it now. There's something here, and how come no one talks about that? How come it's only independent little podcasts like mine that talk about the Las Vegas stuff, right? Nobody's disproved it yet. Not debunkers are afraid to touch it. They won't even. Mick West turned down $5,000 to do an analysis, right? So how come we're not talking about that? How come the bigger names in the UFO community? I've said this before. It's not going to change anything, right? Because you know what? Because this is a controlled disclosure that we're seeing on top of efforts at the same time. There's two things that seem to be going on. There seems to be this controlled disclosure effort, right, where you keep UFOs in the news all the time, and then there's this other sideshow that we're getting where they're trying to convince people, oh yeah, this is all our secret tech. It's all our secret tech. Because they think you're stupid. They think everyone's dumb out there. You know what? I guess they are. The mainstream media, right? They're stupid. They're dumb. I don't know. The people at the top of these places probably know. But the reporters, right? They're all been brainwashed their whole lives. Obviously, they're brainwashed and stupid. They fell for the stigma. They don't want to talk about it because they don't want to be viewed as crazy. It's just so tiring. It's so tiring that here we are. We actually have whistleblowers that testified under oath about this stuff. And yet we have, and on top of it, then none of them, to this point, really have offered any sort of hard evidence, right? All we get is words. But at the same time, we have proof here that shows that there are non-human intelligent beings here. I think they're probably extraterrestrial, but that's just me. I don't know where they're from, but they're not human. That's all I could say. And I had an encounter with one of these things a long time ago, so I know it's real. And everyone who looks at that evidence and digests it will know themselves as well. So let's stop playing this stupid game. Okay, Ross, if Ross Coulthard has some information other than just words, I think it's time to share it. Okay, where's the big UFO that the building got built? Why can't you reveal the location? It's all nonsense. It's just to keep people coming back for more, to find out what the next episode tells you, right? Instead of telling them the goddamn truth already. It's just so tiring. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who feel the same way I do about this right now. It's just it's an insult to intelligence. That's the bottom line. My intelligence is insulted because it's like I feel like we're being treated like little dumb kids who don't know any better. Yeah, Santa Claus is coming tonight. Wait till you see. You better go to bed early. You're gonna wake up. Santa Claus is gonna. You better hurry up and go to bed. He won't come. It's all nonsense. We're being treated like kids. The same kind of nonsense, right? That we experienced when we were kids growing up. Now we're getting tricked again by the people who have more money and power than we have. And I could see right through it. A lot of us could see right through it. And a lot of us are sick and tired of it. Our intelligence is most certainly insulted over all of this stuff. And I'm sick and tired of these games. Let's see the proof and say, how come Ross Coulthard has no problem talking about stuff where he can't prove and he can't show you anything? How come he never talked about the Las Vegas case? There's evidence there. He knows Scott Roeder, right? He could have done something about that himself. Why doesn't he? Because obviously he's part of this mainstream effort, this slow disclosure effort. It's just disgusting, and I'm sick and tired of it. Everybody should be. Everybody who's concerned about this issue and thinks that we should have been told the truth a long time ago should be sick and tired of this cover-up. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.